as you're walking in here to record this, I heard you say, I need a vacation from my vacation. What'd you guys just do?
We were just in Florida for 10 days.
Uh, Not just in Florida. You were the consummate
We did the American pilgrimage
to
to Disney World.
to Disney World. Man, I have not done that with my family. I probably am not courageous enough to do that with my family, but it brings up a good point. October 29th, 2020, you and I did a show on, it was called How to Vacation. So folks, if you go to True Life podcast episode, I don't know what episode, but October 29, How to Vacation. And we talked about that. I think we broke it down into like 3 segments. That there's the literal, well, that's what most people think of as vacation. I went, took my family, spent an ungodly amount of money, slept really bad, ate really fun, but maybe not good. And you're decimated. Good. It was a family experience. That's the benefit.
Well, yes. And we did try to vacation differently. So there was 4 days at Disney, and I even scheduled a flex day in there, which was good because, well, let me finish that thought. And then we had 3 days at the beach.
Oh, nice.
With the intent of rest and R&R and relaxation. So I would qualify this vacation as, the 4 days of Disney. And both of us, I mean, Marcy more, when the stress of travel and getting ready and all of that just tends, you sleep less the few days ahead of time, and she will tend to have a day or two of fever.
Oh, wow.
And she did. And I was so glad because we just said, okay, a day of nothing. Our little condo thing had a pool. And so we pooled, we played pickleball, we played basketball, we played spike ball. But again, there's not a lot of just laying by the pool. And what is amazing about Disney or doing those kind of things is, I mean, there's just, it's stimulation overload.
Yeah.
And you'll laugh at this. So we would make a plan at the early part of the day and say, okay, let's not do what we did yesterday. And you turn around, look at your watch, and you're like, oh my gosh, it is 9 o'clock. We have not even thought about dinner. What are we going to do? Well, restaurants are kind of closing. I'm actually mad at the restaurant. Why are you closing? No kidding. We counted them. There was over 45 cars in line at Taco Bell.
Wow.
The economy was booming, whatever. People were out, all this kind of stuff. We couldn't find a place to eat. So we're like, okay, well, let's go to the grocery store. And by the time we got to the grocery store, and I was worried that Walmart closed at 11. We squeaked in the door at 10:40. We're buying stuff. We get in line. It's now 11:05. We get in line. There's over 50 carts.
Oh my gosh.
In line. It was.
This is where you're supposed to talk about fasting. You don't have to eat. You were not.
We're on vacation.
You were not malnourished. You would not starve. You would sleep better without the food. But I get it.
Didn't sleep well.
Yeah.
But and then we went to the beach, and I love the beach, but the sun and the surf, it is not restful. It's just not restful.
Not at that intensity. Yeah, my gosh,
we had such a great time, and we always went to bed a little bit too late. We got up a little bit too early. My ring did not give me good sleep grades, even at low altitude and stuff. And so I would call that vacation adventure.
I was going to say adventure, experience, memories, whatever. But yeah, not rejuvenating renewal from a personal soul spirit. But and that was, and we, again, folks, go listen to that show, but that was another one, is the vacation where it's just to renew and refresh and have joy and whatnot. And then we really put out another one, which was to really recuperate. Yeah. Like,
and we have it on the calendar, her time, my time.
Yeah.
We're putting it in.
Yeah. I had the opposite. My wife took 2 of the kids on an adventure to see another kid. I was at home, and there were some other kids around, but I was mainly with my youngest, and we just had sweet time. She's just a quiet soul anyway. So I had renewal. It was really,
I'm a little jealous.
It was really sweet. So you come back with yours, and your family probably has IBS. That's our topic for the day. So as always, I'm going to give you the Google search. I think that this is always what does Dr.
Google say?
Yeah. I'm not going to source, from this because it's not fact. It's just, this is what comes up when you type in. So when you type in IBS, the first thing that comes up, definition: irritable bowel syndrome is a disorder characterized by abdominal pain or discomfort, an altered bowel habit, chronic or recurring diarrhea, constipation, or both, either mixed or in alternation. It says IBS affects 25 to 45 million people in the United States. About 2 in 3 IBS sufferers are female. About 1 in 3 are male. It affects people of all ages, even children. Worldwide, 10 to 15% of the population estimated to have IBS. This is just what I'm reading. This is just what pops up first. The exact cause of IBS is not known. Symptoms may result from a disturbance in the way the gut, brain, and nervous system interact. This can cause changes in normal bowel movement and sensation. Listen to this. You're going to love this. Stress does not cause IBS, Dr. James. However, because of the connection between the brain and the gut, stress can worsen or trigger symptoms. So that's just the first question that comes up. The next little question that comes up in Google is, why is IBS increasing? And it says stress and how you deal with it. But then the next line is, researchers don't believe stress actually causes IBS, but it can increase the frequency and severity of the symptoms. All right. So I'll stop there.
One of my favorite topics, one of the most common complaints, as you read the numbers there. And where do we start? Even that statement right there is, researchers think that stress does not cause it, but what if they give you a medication? There are some FDA approved medications for the treatment of IBS, but guess what they are?
Anti-anxiety.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's just like Zoloft and those other medicines. So but it makes sense. There is a gut-brain connection. So then to make a blanket statement that stress, which is of course how your brain perceives the moment that you're in, has no relationship to it. It's kind of like saying getting wet or water does not make you, swimming does not make you wet. You're not wet when you're in water. It just doesn't make sense. Even the diagnosis itself, IBS. Hey, doc, my tummy's a little upset. I've got a little constipation, a little diarrhea. My gut is really irritated. And to see some old, ivory tower doc with a white beard say, well, I think you have irritable bowel syndrome, ICD-10 code of K40 whatever. Let's give you this medicine. The patient is diagnosing themselves. They're saying my gut's irritated. And then to have a diagnosis of irritable bowel syndrome related. And so it makes me so frustrated because it's everybody.
And also if you look, you're just talking to the spectrum, everybody's on the spectrum. Yeah. And if you look at symptoms and a list of symptoms at, WebMD or Healthline or wherever, it's again frustrating because it's everything. They'll give you a symptom and they can relate everything to the possibility of IBS, or it could be diabetes,
or thyroid,
or it could be high blood pressure, or whatever. So it's so unhelpful. But with that said, what are the primary red flags to you?
Red flags. Because of the people that listen to us, Parkinson's would have been a kind of a low, not too many people, or maybe their parents or something like that. But this is going to hit a lot of people. And here's another frustrating thing. Younger people, they're not aware of what they're not aware of. They don't know what it feels like to feel normal, because people who have grown up with constipation or something like that, and especially women, like it said there, but women from 12 to maybe 30, they don't even realize how often they go to the bathroom. They just don't think about bowel movements. They don't talk about poop.
Can I give you there's another thing. So check this out. If you type in, this is a comedy thing that some comedian does, like James Cordone or Jimmy Fallon or whatever. I saw it, where one of the kids pulled it up with a celebrity, and they'll type in a couple words and see
what comes up.
Guess what comes up. I did that. No joke. I did that. And it was how often should you? Okay.
So when you put in poop.
No.
Oh.
I didn't. All I typed in Google was, how often should you? That's all I did.
Oh, gotcha.
First thing that came up, wash your hair. No lie. It's just a random. Second thing, poop. So, I mean, this is where truth is better than fiction.
It's a common question.
It is the second most common question after wash your hair. That's surprising. But how often should you poop? First response is from Healthline. And it says there's generally no accepted number of times a day a person should poop. As a broad rule, pooping anywhere from 3 times a day to 3 times a week is considered normal. That was the most popular answer. If you go down through, that was what was cited. I don't know what study, I don't know what, but that was the most cited, even to the guy we like, Dr. Mercola. He still cited that that's the common. He didn't give me a number. I was wanting to counter
1.3
with exactly that, because my thought, so let's just go. So here I am. I'm not the doc. I'm just your natural guy. Now I'm a healthier inclined person. And when I think of IBS, I tend to think of, and this has your influence already in it, but I generally would think of just food. It's just food. It just matters what I ate, just like heartburn, just that's it. And I cash it in that one thing. Now I've been around you enough to also think about stress. Now, to go further to this issue of poop, my thought is, being an athlete, whatever, I'm used to, man, at least once a day. If you go a day, I mean, I literally can't. I'm not aware of a day in my life where I haven't at least once, and usually within the first 5 minutes or 10 minutes of waking. I mean, I go, and then usually later in the morning after some coffee as well. And to me, that's my norm. But what they're saying is there is no norm. Jump from there.
Yeah.
Because
I love to talk about poop. And from the perspective that we've all grown up, and especially if you're older, over 40 or 50, we didn't talk about poop back then. And in fact, I was trained in the 90s and had the GI people saying poop is poop. It's just the refuse of what's coming out. But now we've got the microbiome. We've got all of this fantastic information about the health or lack of health within the colon in terms of the microbiome and all of that stuff, the rhythm, the connection to the brain, to the neurological system, to the immunological system, the interrelationship of the bacterial critters to you. So, and I would agree when you say the word normal in Google and that kind of thing, and you go from 3 times a day to 3 times a week. Yeah, that's normal. What's the normal weight in America? Obese.
Yeah.
That's normal.
Well, right.
What's the normal blood pressure? High. What's the normal state of your mind? Anxious.
What's the
depressed?
normal pre-diabetic state? It's
pre-diabetic.
Yeah. Right there. Yeah.
So the word normal is nearly meaningless in this situation. Okay, well, what's optimal? 1.3 a day? 2 a day?
But that's where I didn't ask that. What's that would be, I don't even know if anything would come up. Probably just from functional medicine. Because what we're really saying from the norm, we're really just saying we should replace that and just say, what is the average? What is the fact of the average?
That's what we mean.
That has nothing to do with optimal.
What's optimal or desirable or yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I have had both, I go 3 times a day. And my favorite story about what I would call constipation was a young woman who's 14-ish. So in that adolescent phase, and IBS was going to be the diagnosis or whatever. And I'm going down the questions, and it's, young women, I've told you this before, they're the hardest ones for me to work with. They don't like these questions.
Yeah.
And the mom is sitting right there, and I'm like, okay, so how often do you go? Number 2, and she's like, I don't know. And I'm like, okay, but just give me a ballpark, is it kind of like once a day or more like once a week? And she's like, yeah, probably once a week. And her mom flipped out. If that kid got puckered up and held on to her, whatever, and increased anxiety, I'm looking at the mom saying, yeah, don't do that. That's the wrong reaction. Yeah. But this young woman had no idea that's constipation. They don't talk about it at the dinner table, and it just isn't talked about, especially in that young teenage place where patterns and habits are getting set. So Kevin, ask your daughters.
Well, we again, thankful to you and my economy, it does come up. My kids, matter of fact, one of the youngest ones, their favorite story is, do you remember that camping trip we went on? And And Randy came back and showed us his poop because it was a perfect poop. I mean, that's still top of the list of that. And camping, my gosh, all my kids camp. I just got Eliza, who produces these shows for us, just came back from 10 days of camping. So, I mean, you can't camp and keep things like that very secret. Okay. So to my economy though, man, when I hear that, and again, all I know is well, I shouldn't say that. I was gonna say my norm, but I also am a student at least of health and wellness. And my thought is, man, every single day I just looked on my app, my Strava app, my exercise thing, that or the Garmin Connect. I don't know, but it showed my average calories burned per day. However it calculates that, I'm sure it's not exact, but it's close to 3,000. And so I'm taking in X amount of food. Good food, bad food, whatever, but I'm taking in. And as you talk about, then my body, it's got to go somewhere. I mean, some of it's going to go to just burning energy. Some's going to go to muscle or fat and repair and whatever. And then you take the trash out. And my norm is the trash goes out at least once a day, if not more. So yeah, what is optimal? I wonder about the Olympics are going on right now. My guess, and you may tell me I'm wrong, but my guess is by far and large, most of those athletes who are eating and living, sleeping, whatever for performance, it's at least a once a day activity, which is hard then not to say, well, then it seems like that would be more on the optimal direction than once a week or 3 times a week or whatever.
So you said a couple of things there, and just like being overweight is not calories in, calories out. Poop is not, stuff comes in, trash goes out. There's a lot that happens in between. And, what are you eating and what's the fiber content and all of that?
And your output, I guess, too. I had a friend who did a ride across America. She's out of the blue. He decides, he's a cyclist. I'm going to ride across America. He's like, oh my gosh, I didn't poop for a couple of days because I realized I wasn't taking in enough. There was nothing. My body's using everything that I had theoretically. Does that not make sense?
No, yeah,
really?
He would be wrong. He wasn't eating enough fiber. He wasn't drinking enough. He was too stressed out about it, in all likelihood.
Okay.
But to answer your question, like what's optimal? I would say 1+
a day.
Yeah.
Well, you told me, and I've repeated it, that wherever you got that technically to some degree, it would be good to, whenever you eat, you then poop.
There is a gastrocolic reflex. So when you eat or drink coffee or something like that, there is a colon response. And oftentimes that will trigger, I got to go. And you and I have talked about when we're standing at desks, like me and the standing thing, it's like, oh my gosh, if you're sitting, you're kind of stopping things up. If you're standing, the gravity and standing and all that kind of thing, there's going to be more of a tendency to perceive the urge to go. So consistency of exercise, like your esophagus and your colon, it's a muscle. If you're moving the rest of your muscles, all your other muscles tend to go. Hydration, status, and just think of flow, like in and out, breathe in, breathe out, eat, exercise, water, hydration, stress. You can kind of think of stress as holding, you hold it in your neck. Many women, mostly women with a stress response, and they'll be constipated. They hold it in, but it's not like you can't imagine that. It's like, oh my gosh, doesn't it just fill up and fill up and fill up and fill up? Do you know what the longest time between going is with a patient that I've worked with? She went over 20 days.
I want to hear. Oh my gosh.
Right. And she's not walking around with weird. My son, as a baby, infant, so breastfeeding, and breastfed poops are famously, smellless and yellow and all that kind of seedy and all that. 11 days.
Really?
Yeah. And we were, stimulating and doing all those kind of things that trying to do it. And he's not got any pain, eating the same amount all the time. Well, how did that happen? And so it's a complex thing, just like everything else in the body, that Americans and people out there who are going along with, gosh, I go every other day. Oh, that's normal for me.
Right.
I would say, don't say that. Just use it as a piece of information to say, why might it be slower? Another thing I want to put in here is you might go every day, but what if what is coming out is from 2, 3, 4 days ago?
Right. Well, and the opposite, which I've had problems with, is this is something I ate 2 hours ago.
And that's also a problem.
And I didn't know. I thought, man, I'm processing really good. And you said, dude, that is not healthy. Anyways. And this is, and I do want to just point out that this is not just the poop show. It's not IBS is not just about poop, but it is obviously, I didn't know until I got into this, how common that is, the correlation that people look at. Cause we're also going to talk about bloating and
here's
pain
yeah, that's so when I'm asking the questions, we're going down the GI track and we're suspicious of IBS or something like that, I'm going to ask about, and the words just kind of rattle off: gassy, bloaty, constipation, diarrhea, pain. And then under pain is, how do you say it? You can't just say, people get really, it's hard for people. They'll say, oh, I just feel yucky. Oh, I just feel indigestion. Oh, I just feel gassy.
Is nauseous? Would that be one?
Nausea.
Yeah.
Refluxy, heartburny, right? Like these are, and so many people were such good copers. They just deal with it. And they say, oh, it's just me. Or you've been to the doctor already. And they say, well, maybe it's IBS. Do you want to take a pill? No. Well, try to rest and relax and eat some good food and whatever.
And again, I did not know this. The pill you're saying is an anti-anxiety. That's the primary pill.
If you are going to take a pill for IBS.
I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah. So, but working on the SSRI and just giving your body more serotonin to reduce that brain gut stress.
Because from an ignorant standpoint, I would have thought, oh my gosh, if there's IBS, I'm thinking gut. And I'm thinking, are you not, that the med would be something to calm down, kind of like a heartburn thing, like to calm down the acids or to increase the acids or to,
you would think.
Yeah,
but it's because, as you read, one of the hallmarks of a kind of IBS is they're usually IBS-C or IBS-D or IBS mixed. So diarrhea, constipation are mixed. Oh. And a lot of people who will be going every other day or 3. And then I'll say, well, do you get intermittent diarrhea for no apparent reason? You're not sick. And it'll be, oh yeah. Then I'll just get a day of water. Well, now they've got constipation and diarrhea and irritable bowel syndrome. So
to what you said, just to leave, I mean, not to leave, but just to, address the poop issue on Mercola. He did talk about, again, the primary things is this is the headlines of his article. How you eat is directly related to how you poop. How well you poop may be related to your position when you poop, and then why it's easier at home to poop. So those were 3 headline topics in his article about poop. And then what do you do about it? And he said primary treatment. I don't know if it's under treatments. Is it regular exercise, eating a diet based on real whole foods with plenty of fiber, which you keep repeating, and exactly what you said too, the right amount of water for your height and weight and activity level. So that's what was talked about in regards to poop, at least, at least that aspect of IBS. But is that
I think that's the main kind of thing that we're going to talk to people. And then a lot of people, and I put me in that category too. We were just traveling, and it bumps the rhythm. Like on the day of travel, I wake up and I'm already like, get to the airport, plan. My body didn't think about pooping. So a whole day goes by, and for me, I'll quickly get back on track, but it's very, very common that with travel, you slow down, you miss a day or something like that. And I would say that's the brain gut connection. Like the brain is very differently thinking about whatever.
And so interestingly, he talked about that, how many people, my wife's like that on a trip and stuff. You get home, and I have kids like that, get home. It's, oh my gosh.
Yeah. My kids won't go at school. Yes, they just won't.
Dude, I'll go. I mean, I grew up going to bike races and a porta potty, a tree, anything, man. I have never had anything hold me back. But anyways, okay. So on that, but when you come back to
well, hang on. The other thing he said was position.
Oh, right.
And I do want to encourage people. Have you ever heard of the squatty potty?
Yeah. We have one.
Have you seen it? Did you see the YouTube?
Oh yeah.
Commercial.
Oh yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Oh, well, we have a knockoff. It's a little stool. My wife,
you don't need to buy the name brand squatty potty.
Yeah, you can do a stool, but it was, what country is it? India, where it's just a hole. I mean, even in a nice home, it's a hole in the ground.
Yeah.
Well, and I just think of it because of camping. Camping, we got a little shovel. You go out there, dig your hole, and squat down, and it's great.
You have to.
And the one I hate is the old people ones where the toilet is 10 feet high.
Yeah.
And your feet are hanging off. It's cutting the circulation off the back of your knee.
And it makes it harder.
And it's and I learned that. I didn't know. Yeah.
So to encourage people, don't get those high toilets.
You get a little kid one. We have
Yeah.
we have a small one in one of our bathrooms. That's my favorite one to use. But in one of our bathrooms, my wife did get one of the little stools. So you can use a regular stool, probably 6 inches ish, maybe, or so like that. Get your knees up, and it literally opens the door.
Yeah, it's just a positional thing. And over the course of time, that people pooped in a hole in the ground. That's just the way it's always been done, and until the modern toileting times. And then you throw in less exercise, less water, less fiber, more constipation, and now just position is another piece of it. And then years goes by and habits begin to get formed and people think it's normal and yada, yada. And then you have IBS.
I mean, in my home, the thing that we maybe errantly put too much, and I think I do this with everything, put too much focus on, is food. I am grateful the kids generally know if we have a bunch of sugar or a bunch of gluten, or, some of the kids know dairy.
I'm going to debate you on this one.
Really? Okay. Well, that's why I preface it saying
I think I know where you're going, but finish your statement.
We probably give too much credit to that, of then later a feeling of, oh, I'm bloated, or I'm constipated, or I'm diarrhea.
So what if you don't have a feeling? Does that mean that food was okay?
Yeah, we probably inherently think, oh, well, I did a good job with that one
because I feel great.
I don't feel bad, at least.
I feel fine after ice cream. Therefore,
yeah, bring it on.
So 2 stories there. Do you remember the time that you took my son on an overnighter prior to a cross country meet?
I do.
And
I thought about it recently because we were in Salida. Yeah. But the night before.
And he had his best time after you fed him pizza and ice cream.
Thus, the best thing to do before a race is pizza and ice cream.
So still my son, and I have a bone to pick with my dad because we went home and my dad was like, ooh, you're gluten-free. It's like, gosh, we forgot to get this gluten-free stuff or whatever else. So do you feel bad when you eat gluten? My son is like, no. That's not why. That's not so down that pathway is, or flip it around. Do you feel that much better when you eat broccoli? Do you stand up from broccoli and go, oh, I feel good? So by the same token, yes, of course, what does your performance want to be? But I think we're so far removed from eat bad equals poor. Your body is so amazing. There's so much resiliency there that you've got years and years of bad eating before there's poor performance in general for most people.
Well, and to your son, maybe he ran well because the night before you fed him great and he's really feeding off of that for the race, and his body was in survival mode dealing with the junk I let him eat. We don't know.
We don't know. And that's part of the problem in America, is that people will say, well, I eat that stuff. It doesn't bother me. Okay.
Well, and my thought is what you say. Well, the guy I've been smoking for 20 years, I haven't gotten cancer yet.
Gotten cancer one time.
Okay.
When the doc tells me I got cancer, I'll quit. Okay.
And that is what brings me to at least a bigger picture of, I'm concerned about the long-term manifestation of stuff, so that even though it may not cause me a problem now, if we know that we know that we know, and the research is out there to know that eating, just like we read Mercola, eating whole foods, natural foods in their natural state as much as we can, not too much fiber, yada, yada. And that's been, can I say proven?
No, because when that's another rabbit hole. Okay. But we'll do a show on randomized controlled trials and what data means in nutrition science. That's a good topic. Let's turn a corner here towards the people in the car or wherever they're listening, and they're saying, yeah, but I've been really eating right and exercising, drinking my water, but I still have gassy, bloated, constipation, diarrhea, pain for no apparent reason. That's the people that wind up in my office, is like, I'm so sick and tired of this. I'm trying so hard to eat this and do all of that. And yet I still have a basketball in my belly. The gas just kills me. Or for out of the blue, there's diarrhea. Out of the blue, I have really stinky farts. Out of the blue, my stomach feels too full for too long.
Can you keep that train of thought? Because I forgot to mention the stinky fart thing, which I didn't know about till, I was a kid. You fart, it stinks. It's funny, you laugh and it stinks and you go, oh dude, but that is
the norm in America.
That is the norm. And that is actually how it's supposed to be. And it's not till I'm 40 something and you tell me, oh, stinky farts is actually bad. You should be able to have gas even, and
gas is normal.
Expel gas and it doesn't stink.
When you digest,
I had no idea.
there is going to be gas production. Now, most of that gas is resorbed or used up by the bacteria or whatever. But when it comes out, it ought not be enough gas that there's pain, which we call bloating. And there ought not be a discernible foul smell.
Well, now I know that. And in my journey, now I don't have a lot of gas. And when I do, hardly ever does it smell.
And that's where I'd put me. Like I get surprised, and I'm pretty talented at letting them go kind of quiet. And so when the smell is there, especially if I'm in a patient room, it's an emergency. And this happened, in fact, as we're driving to the airport, and I'm in the car, and we don't have the jokes in our car about, oh, dad let one go because everybody's rolling the windows down. They don't ever know. And this time it was there. I'm like, oh gosh, sorry. You know, and the only thing different was, here we go on a trip. And maybe that was something. But yeah, so for people to take home, yes, there's going to be gas, but it shouldn't be too much. Like beans, right? The famous beans. And if I eat beans, there is more gas, but it's not smelly. And some foods will create more gas. Broccoli, the cruciferous vegetables, there is going to, the fiber.
I also, again, just my personal testimony is getting more attuned to the foods that my body doesn't seem to deal with well. And as I don't have them, I really don't have that much gas. If I do,
you're not aware. And that's the way it should be. Is the gas is there, it's getting
absorbed.
resorbed.
Well, it's not, but it's not the pressure or discomfort or whatever. I will say that lately I've noticed a couple of times, and I'm kind of on a stick of intermittent fasting. So I'm not eating until 12 or 1, and I'm doing more exercise than normal. So I'm doing some pretty significant efforts. And sometimes when I'm eating, even if it to me seems good, you know, it's sardines and broccoli or something like that, or whatever. And it doesn't take long. And man, you can hear it. It's like audible gurgling. And I'm thinking, is that right? Is that wrong?
So we call that, there's a medical word. I just lost it. It's a great medical word because it's one of those things that nobody ever says, you know.
I'll give you credit anyway.
The eructation or something like that, the normal stomach sounds. So tummies make sounds, and that's when the doctor listens to you. And even though you can't hear it audibly, it's always going on, those gurgles and the movement, and that's the peristalsis.
But would you say if it's loud enough,
No.
that's a pathology?
No.
Okay.
No.
Well, good. Hopefully.
Generally, no. We're not going to say, oh, do you have loud gurgling in your stomach? Oh, that's a clue. No. So back to the person who's doing everything right, and what, like Google says, no known cause, no known cure. Well, I'm going to introduce this new SIBO term to say, you know, so the research is suggesting, this is new, that up to 80% of people with IBS may have SIBO or SIFO or some variant of this, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth or small intestinal fungal overgrowth. And now there's subsets of SIBO, hydrogen gas or methane gas. And there's going to be even more subsets of this as research goes.
Can I read prepping for this? I pulled that up too. And it said just what you did. Small intestinal bacterial growth occurs when there's an abnormal increase in the overall bacterial population in the small intestines, particularly types of bacteria not commonly found in that part of the digestive tract. This condition is sometimes called the blind loop syndrome. Now, pretty quick after that, it says there's no definitive test for IBS. So diagnosis is based on symptoms and history. Until we have a better understanding, there will be a debate for cause and treatment. Some studies say that 50 to 70% of people with IBS may have SIBO, and that by treating SIBO, IBS symptoms resolve. That's all I pulled up on it.
Okay. So if we flesh that out, and so for me in 2019, 20, and this year, reading more about SIBO and the connection to so many of our patients are in this mysterious syndromic category, right? Like they've already been to the doctor. I have this syndrome of this constellation of symptoms that we call a syndrome. And they tell me they tell me nothing's wrong with me because nothing's measurable, but I'm suspicious of Lyme or Candida or mold or these syndromic. And IBS is one of those. It's a constellation, like we read, constellation of symptoms, gas, ability, constipation, diarrhea, intermittently over time. Sometimes I feel great. Sometimes I don't. What is going on in my gut? Well, most of us, and we'll go back to that spectrum idea. So you have bacteria, let's just say everywhere. Anytime we say, oh, there's no bacteria there, eventually we're proven wrong, right? Like in the gastric lining, which is a pH of 1, very, very, very acidic, and the H. pylori exists there. Now we know there's subsets of H. pylori. So in the small intestine, there's not very much bacteria, certainly not, but it's not sterile. There's small amounts of bacteria
there. I mean, you're teaching me there's good and bad bacteria. I mean,
well,
yeah.
yes. And like cholera is considered bad, but you've got cholera in your gut. In all likelihood, you've got strep on the back of your throat. Now, when strep overgrows because you're too tired or too sick or too this or too that, and now you have strep throat, now you can call it bad, but it's just different.
Okay.
Right. So I hesitate to call a thing good or bad. It just is. And now it might be overgrown. It might not be in the right place. It might be causing a symptom. And so if you have too much cholera, you're going to have diarrhea. Now, if you live in a place with no clean water and you keep drinking water with cholera, you're going to have diarrhea until you die. Mm-hmm. Now that we would say is bad. Well, stop drinking dirty water. Try to be in a place clean, and then you'll get the diarrhea. It'll go away and you'll be okay. But if we find cholera in you and you say, well, I feel fine, we're not going to go give you an antibiotic for cholera.
Okay.
So in that case, you can't call it bad. You can't call strep bad on the back of your throat. It's there. So there is small amounts of bacteria in probably everywhere. But there's trillions in the colon. And then you've got the cecal valve, the ileocecal valve. So the transition from small intestine to large intestine, colon, there is a valve there that is meant to, it's a valve, right? Like it's a different organ.
Okay.
It's part of the GI tract, but it's a very different purpose and all of that. The small intestine is for digestion, and you're getting energy from your food and all of that. And then you put it in the poop chute, right? Like here's where the waste is going to go. And part of that waste, just like a compost pile out in the back of your house, is the bacteria begin the composting process. And that's actually very good for you, right? Like there's this symbiotic relationship that we have with the bacteria. So when they get out of balance, then it becomes a dysbiotic relationship, a dysfunctional relationship, and you get symptoms.
Where do those happen? I mean, literally, so it's with IBS, where do this
people are going to point around their belly button, right? Like so that
I even feel sometimes like over to the left. What's over here?
Left is, so you've got your descending colon on the left side, and transverse over here, and ascending and then in the middle is the small intestines, your guts.
Okay.
And when people say my tummy hurts and they wave at everything, that's kind of a hard one. If they say it hurts right here, then it is more likely appendicitis or cholecystitis or hepatitis.
And what about if it's down further? Where would it be? Down further?
Appendix?
I don't know. No, I'm asking, like in the digestion intestinal thing. It's just, so if you go back past the belly, even, where do you get to?
Well, now it's going to come back up. Now the ascending colon is bringing it back up underneath your rib cage almost.
Okay.
That transverse colon, and then right under over here by the spleen, and then down, and then out.
Okay.
So when people have IBS, there's not a general, it hurts over here, like appendicitis, right lower quadrant. So IBS is generally.
So it's not localized. It's pretty much generalized.
It's very general. Yeah. Okay. And that's the nature of the way that the guts feel pain, is people will say it's here. I can't specify it because that's how it feels pain.
And of course the question is, so what do I do? And I'm,
well, let's go back to SIBO. Say, okay, in contrast to what they say, I think there is testing. Okay. And then people might need somebody like me to help them down that pathway. But again, you can go online and find tests, but it's a breath test.
I was going to ask you. It's a breath test. But so can you get that at Everlywell or what?
I don't know about Everlywell, maybe Life Extension or labtestonline.com.
So if folks here at Life Extension,
maybe.
Maybe
it's a breath test.
So maybe type in SIBO, SIBO, SIBO breath test.
And I know. And there's also an IBS smart test. Now that's a different test. It's looking for, because many of the people create antibodies to a certain bacteria in the gut. Let me back up. This bacteria, so if you have SIBO, which means your bacteria are now overgrowing in a different place.
Okay.
It's not that the bacteria is bad, it's just in the wrong place. Now, how did it get in the wrong place? Probably the most common cause is at some point in time you had an infection.
Okay.
A food-borne infection, food poisoning. And most of us have.
Yeah, I sure have.
Okay. Most of us have been in different countries, eaten weird foods or whatever.
Mexican fish, man.
Got Montezuma's revenge.
Oh my gosh.
And so that's nearly every person on the planet.
So you're saying that can go in there and you think you get past it, but you didn't. It's still.
There's a residual thing.
And I know you tested me for Giardia because not a lot, but infrequently when I'm up, if it's from a high mountain and it's a little stream and I think, nothing's gotten in there yet, I'll drink. So that's, yeah.
And in fact, we had that conversation then about, well, there is going to be Giardia in there, but is it causing you symptoms? And is it enough? Because you were having some symptoms and we're saying, well, gosh, was that it? And if it had been elevated with symptoms, we would have given you an antibiotic.
But that's
would have felt
still
better.
Interesting. You say, because I'm thinking about whether it has Giardia in the water or not. And you're saying it probably does. It's just to what level maybe. Yeah. And is my body at a place where it can do what it's supposed to do and ward it off? See that as
recognize it and say, oh, let this one go.
Yeah.
And it's,
or it takes root.
Or it takes root. So I was just getting ready to say, if you have a healthy lawn, the dandelion seed is less likely to take root.
Okay.
If you have an unhealthy lawn, it's more likely to take root. So the lawn in this case is the bacteria that's already in there. Is it in the right place in the colon, not in the small intestine? And if it takes root in the small intestine, it's like weeds are infesting your small intestine here. That's a good analogy.
Okay.
And the symptoms are gassy, bloating, constipation, diarrhea, these kind of things. And some people have more gas, some people have more whatever thing. I'm interested in this area because in that brain, gut, neuro interconnection, if there's dysregulation anywhere. So SIBO is now high up on the list of considerations for anybody with an autoimmune. And that is something I have contemplated doing on my son, but he has no symptoms. So there's this, not that pressure. And I think it might be hard for him to do the breath. It's hard for the kids to do the breath test because it's a little bit technical and all of that. If we then find, and so what is this breath test? So you basically fast overnight or maybe a longer fast. And so you're empty and then you're going to drink a sugary drink. So you're going to drink sugar, the bacteria's favorite food.
Okay.
And you drink it and then you breathe into a baggie that you seal it up and send it in every 30 minutes for 3 hours. And, gassiness is one of those main symptoms, but everybody is gassy. Like I say, you're going to expel some hydrogen, some methane, some of that, and it should be a low amount. If it's a high amount, we say you more likely have a lot of bacteria high up and it's coming up in your breath. And it makes sense.
Yeah.
So if we then find that, then we say, okay, now we've got a target that we can use an antibiotic for, a pharmaceutical, or nutraceuticals going down if somebody doesn't want to take a pharmaceutical. And actually the antibiotic is quite expensive.
Well, and when you talk about, you're talking about how do you treat it in essence? And it seems like there's so many things. I mean, there can be a point. You talked about that, back to the person who feels like they're doing so many things. I'm eating clean. I'm doing intermittent fasting. I'm exercising. I'm meditating and whatever. And I still have that. My thought I go to, well, we can still have done whatever XYZ happened and be broken.
Yes. In fact, I would say everybody already has. We're on the spectrum of broken.
Because I wonder about that. So I just pulled up here for anybody watching the video. Here's this. So this is orthodigestine. That's the name from a certain manufacturer. Is there a generic term for what would you call this?
Digestive enzymes.
A digestive enzyme. So I use these. I feel like they help, especially with protein. I feel like I have a harder problem with protein, feeling like, oh my gosh, I just ate a brick. And so I take these, I take a certain amount I've kind of gotten used to, and I do. Sometimes I wonder, is it placebo? Because once in a while I'll be somewhere and I don't have it. And do I just feel like death without it? No, but is it helping me? I think so. I think so. And so should I have to use them for a certain time period or forever? At this point, I've been using them forever, years, with the thought of, for some reason, I don't know, I just have a hard time with protein. It feels like a brick, and this seems like it helps. So I take them all the time.
And it's not wrong. And we can't prove it's right. So, in that, but if we ask the question, how did you get to that place in the first place? What's the most likeliest situation? And in fact, down your own GI story, and would it be worth the time, the money, effort for you to do a SIBO test? Maybe.
Well, my story, I was a little kid sitting on the potty in distress, in
With
pain.
constipation?
I don't even remember. Just pain. Just like my stomach is messed up. And, and I ate the standard American fare. It's probably a Happy Meal and a shake and, whatever.
Was that common throughout the elementary years? Was there food poisoning later on? Do you remember Montezuma's Revenge or going somewhere else? Or?
Not a big memory. Doesn't mean it didn't happen. I had stomach stuff. I mean, I spent a lot of time, on the potty. And so it was early on. Early on.
So is it one of those tests that we'd say everybody needs to do it as a baseline? And I would say no, and
I'm not aware that I have. Do you remember me doing one?
No, you haven't.
Oh, I haven't. Okay.
That's what I'm saying. Would it be worth the time, the money, the effort for you to do it, to kind of answer the question, is there evidence for why I'm needing or potentially needing to keep taking these things? Why won't your own digestive enzymes sort of kick in and take care of protein that you eat? And there, I'd say, well, the reason why it makes sense. Well, I'm smiling. So do you know what I'm going to say might be your what would you think? I think your main deficiency is
meditating.
Yeah.
Jerk. Well, okay. And there I was going to ask, as far as a treatment, I'm interested in, because you and I have done prolonged fasting, which in my frame of reference, that's like 3 days or more or something like that.
Okay. Yeah, more than a day.
Yeah. Which you kind of quit pooping for the most part. I mean, you're not taking anything in. And so to me, it's kind of like a reset. And how great would it be? Now, I have not done this specifically to do a prolonged fast. Let's say 3 days. If, again, we're supposed to say, check with your doctor. And if it's, don't die from this, but for me, so I'll own it for me to do 3 days or more, and then to come off of it and do an elimination diet. Would that be a fair opportunity to kind of reset? Now, elimination diet, of course, you're going to say that doesn't include meditating.
Right.
Stress.
I was just going to say that if you do a 3 day fast, and then your reset is, okay, when you reintroduce food, because you already eat pretty well. And now, what you're going to do is say, okay, I'm going to stay away from corn and the things that bother you.
Yeah.
And then I would say, okay, what if you conscientiously put in, and I would go with concrete things, because you and I don't do well with fuzzy meditation, but down the pathway of the breath work. And we said, okay, Kevin Miller, for after you do this fast, every time you eat, either when you eat or don't eat, right? Like if you're not going to do these things and you're choosing to fast intermittently, or when you eat, there's enough time for you to do these several things. Number one is you sit down and you do the Wim Hof 30 deep breaths as fast as you can. Then you go into 3 minutes on the clock of, let's call it prayer. So rather than just, thank you God for the food and whatever else, it's 3 minutes of prayerful, mindful, meditative with your brain. Your body awareness exercise that we talk about in meditation is you're kind of thinking about food. You're giving permission for your body to eat. You are trying to salivate.
Okay.
You are you're choosing to anticipate. We talk about this all the time. This is part of the fun of food. You're choosing to smell the smell, to think of the ground it came out of, to think of the hands prepared it, to be grateful to God for just, the enjoyment of taste and those kind of things for 3 minutes before every meal. And then another thing that you do that you're already doing is you set your fork down, right? Like you chew.
I noticed it with you because you used to be the wolfer.
Yeah.
And you would just inhale your food. And now I think generally when we're out there eating, I think you eat slower than I do. You take a bite, you put your fork down.
Try to set the bowl down. Yeah.
Yeah.
that, but, and then we already talked about don't do any fluids
Right.
with the meal.
Well, a good Cabernet though, that
Yeah,
eclipses
but
everything.
4 or 5 ounces only and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yes. And we've taken, I don't know, hundreds of people down that pathway. Number one, people just don't do it. They just, lose track and, don't do those things. And another one to do would be to get up and go on a walk.
After?
Yeah.
Oh.
So in your case, at work is kind of hard, but I'm thinking of you at the house and you walk the property. Just go outside.
No,
check
the thing lately, because we're in the summer, is afterwards one of the kids will often say, "Hey, come on the trampoline with me."
Yeah.
Oh man, if you've overeaten or eaten the wrong stuff, that's bad.
Or
news.
even ate normally, but your digestive enzymes are so sluggish that they're not moving things along.
Yeah.
Then you feel too full too fast.
Yeah.
And it's going to take you, Kevin Miller, 3 months of doing that on a consistent basis before you say, oh, now I don't feel like I need these pills.
Okay.
That's a pain in the butt. And in all of that, as we're thinking about SIBO and IBS. So again, we have created for almost any malady, we would say, we talk all the time about the basics. But if somebody's over here saying, gosh, I feel like I've been doing that, I'm still struggling with abdominal discomfort and yuckiness or I'm in the autoimmune world or something like that. What about this diagnosis of IBS and what can I do about that? And I would say, okay, I do really think that the testing is critical. If somebody is going to have that diagnosis, that's one of those areas that I would say, Google around, find one of those testing places that you can do online. And how then do people eat, right? Like there is an antibiotic. It's very expensive. There are nutraceuticals, but they're expensive and you got to do them every day, all the time for 2-3 months. And then what's the diet? Have you ever heard of FODMAPs?
Yeah. I don't know what it is though. Just from you.
Well, here's the really interesting thing. Have you ever heard of GAPS?
Yeah. But again, I don't know.
Right? Like these are all moms of kids who are like, I am not going to take what the doctor says. I know my kid doesn't need that pill. I know something else is going on. It's got to be related to what we're eating or what we're doing, right? Like this is just common sense. So these moms knuckle down and they figure things out. So GAPS, the gut associated psychiatric syndrome, is it gut or gluten? I think it's gut. But what you eat, does it have an impact on your brain and how you think? And if your kid's on the spectrum, absolutely. FODMAP, fructo, oligo, di, monosaccharide. The A is something and the P is something. Consult Dr. Google here. Anyway, it's basically get the sugars down.
Yeah. I can't even.
Yeah.
I can't even pronounce it.
Oh, fermentable oligo, di, monosaccharides, and polyols. So basically, it's the sugars that are the breakdown products from carbohydrates and from
the processed food
and the alls, all the erythritol, xylitol, all those alls of sweeteners.
Yeah.
So,
unnatural food. This is the antithesis of Michael Pollan's food rules, where
no. Fructo is very, very, and fermentable is also very natural.
Oh, okay.
So, but if we would go back 50 years, you and I, and start our life off with not the American whatever, and come over here and enjoy fructose in the apple and the orange and whatever, the way it was meant to be, which is not all the time, not as orange juice and seasonally, then we're not going to likely need to do the FODMAPs diet.
Yeah.
But most of us have made some mistakes and stress and yada, yada. And here we are. So then you give your body the signal of antibiotic or nutraceutical. And at the same time, we take them down whether it's an SCD diet, which is specific carbohydrate diet, GAPS, FODMAP. It's kind of it's what I call modified FODMAP.
Okay.
We're going to be very specific for the first 30 to 90 days to say, you got to get those foods out, even the healthy stuff, right? Like I know, steel cut oats is healthy, but it's just going to feed the bacteria and they're in the wrong place. And we got to kill them. We got to starve them out. So don't eat the things that they like. And you have to do that. And then most people will say, if they're doing like the people who say, no, I don't want any nutraceuticals or pharmaceuticals, I'm going to change my diet and whatever else, to live on FODMAP, GAPS, SCD diet is very restrictive and it's very hard for a long period of time and people just don't do it. So then they kind of eke back into a different kind of a diet, and the symptoms kind of eke back in there, and it gets very, very frustrating. So my thought for people is like, look, if we've got the diagnosis, let's do the test for SIBO. If we've got something to shoot at, consider the Xifaxan, which is the antibiotic, or a nutraceutical pathway. And at the same time, we starve those suckers out. And then you live in the future on a modified, variable, FODMAP aware kind of a diet. If symptoms start to creep back up, you either tighten up the diet or put the medicines back in. One more factor there is you cannot be constipated. So motility is critical. You have to move things along. So have you ever heard of the migrating motor complex, the MMC? So again, people just don't think about these things. Very cool. But the migrating motor complex, you could think of it as peristalsis. You're gurgling and stuff like that. So the moving around, it migrates, motor complex. So there's a center of movement in the guts.
I can sometimes hear, it feels like it's over here on my left side somewhere. It feels like it's over here, and I can hear it going real systematically. Is it? Okay.
Yeah.
It feels like it's, I mean, I've read stuff, how long does it take to digest XYZ, that it's sitting there going and just doing what it's supposed to, I guess, but I'm listening to it. It's kind of disconcerting.
It don't let that be disconcerting. That is okay. What triggers the migrating motor complex? Not food. So we eat, and the first part of digestion happens in the upper GI and in the upper small intestine. And then here's where you'll say, in America, what triggers that migrating motor complex? Not eating. If you snack, if you eat at 12 and then get a little nuts at 2 and get a little nuts at 4 and then eat again at 6, you're shutting down a signal for that migrating motor complex to move things along.
Okay. Can I jump to the conclusiveness of saying if you're constipated, best thing to do is quit eating? Arguably.
By the time you're already in the constipated state, what would fasting then do? I'm going to say, I don't know right now in terms of being careful for what people are doing out there. Like, let's assume it's an every other day person, not a once a week person. If it's every other day and you're on that form of slow transit constipation, then I would say, yeah, not eating is going to be a trigger to sweep things out.
Yeah.
That's an interesting thought. Exercise, right? Like, this is what triggers this migrating motor complex to move along. Nighttime, sleep, right? Like, hey, folks, let's clean things up, right? Like, have you ever been to a 24-hour Walmart or whatever, and everybody's in there sweeping and cleaning and stocking, and it's like, holy cow, there's a lot going on in here.
Yeah.
Your body doesn't just shut down. It's the time that you need to clean and repair and do all that kind of stuff. But we live in America. Food never stops.
Right.
And so as this just rolls along, and we've all had a foodborne illness sometime in the past, probably, or some version of that. We all have bacteria, dysbiotic, out of balanceness, a little here and a little there. We're all underslept and overstressed. And so then it's just fertile ground for the dandelions to take hold. Well,
and you mentioned, and Mercola said it too, hydration. And we know statistically that we are in America, at least, chronically unhydrated culture. I mean, I know just by going into the bathrooms, public bathrooms, and, guys, and it looks like somebody poured yellow motor oil in there. Oh my gosh.
Maybe he just took his
multivitamin, possibly, that he's peeing out. But, so I'm to that point saying you're not going to hurt yourself by increasing your water.
Depends.
Hydration.
Appropriate
Primarily.
size.
Okay. Broad stroke. Why does coffee cause movement, motility?
Caffeine.
Oh, really? Just the caffeine.
Stimulates.
So it'd be the same if you had a Coke. Okay. I didn't know that.
Or tea, or, other people are like, tea doesn't seem to do a thing for, green tea or black tea doesn't, but
so I didn't know that. So if you're decaf, you're not doing it.
Less. And there's a little bit of caffeine in decaf.
Yeah.
But less. So yeah, the coffee thing is the caffeine in the morning and that kind of thing. And I think that's very common for me too. There's usually first 5 or 10 minutes, you go, which is actually, I would argue, physiologically normal, optimal. your body swept things out overnight. You drop a load in the morning and you go on about your day.
I can play with it in the morning, if it's like a Saturday and I'm trying to sleep in, if I try to, wake up and try to keep it under there, I can kind of keep things at bay and maybe sleep. But if I come to a certain level of consciousness, starts grumbling, man, and I'm going to go pretty quick. I mean, okay, just to wrap up though, if I'm going to go back to the broad stroke,
yeah.
IBS, if we just look at, let's even take away that. Let's just say to the masses out there and
in GI distress, it's so common.
Okay.
People like what you think of as normal is not normal. I would say everybody with GI distress.
Thank you. So it's not a clinical labeled ICD code, blah, blah, blah. But man, you're out there.
You know how I ask it in the clinic? How often do you think about your tummy?
Okay. So aches, pains, discomforts, bloating, gassy, gurgling, whatever. That's
sour, indigestion, nausea.
So if you look at that and say that's the masses, whether it's an IBS clinical or a SIBO or whatever, if you had to, which I know you don't like doing because it's all individual, that's the point, but we can't help if, thousands of people are going to hear to say what primary culprits.
Oh, like the primary cause.
Primary causations, things that you would say, start here.
Yeah. I think constipation is up there. And then you can say, well, what causes constipation and all that?
Well, that's what I'm asking though. It's causations like culprits. I want like what are the
food. So I would say brain, food, movement,
stress. So how are you dealing with stress response? So how are you dealing with stress?
That's right.
So let's say anxiety. That's the term.
Okay. Yeah. If you're perceiving anxiousness.
Yeah. So top of it, you said number one or top three is anxiety. Look at your anxiety levels.
Okay. Well,
audit your anxiety levels.
You would not say you have anxiety.
Yeah. Well, I'm better at admitting now.
Okay.
I'm on the spectrum of anxiety.
All right. So people are super honest.
Anxiety management. Can I say that?
Okay. But same as saying stress response management.
Okay.
You just clinicalized it.
Okay. Well, so
yes,
so
that,
it's auditing,
in that area of the brain, auditing your own stress response.
Okay. So there's that. Food.
Yeah, the content.
What are you putting in?
Yeah, fiber, vegetables, and what are you putting in? If it's highly processed, if it's the standard American diet, those things they slow down the GI tract. They tend towards constipation. They create a fertile ground that can become IBS and SIBO.
Well, to your functional medicine thing, what are you putting in your body? It doesn't like processed foods and sugars and maybe dairy. And for me, corn or, whatever you may be sensitive to that hopefully you're figuring out. And what are you not putting in your body that it wants? Like it may want more water, or it may need more fish oil or whatever. Okay. So food.
That's number two. And then movement, meaning in this case, the movement you're not aware of, the migrating motor complex, the peristalsis.
You're not talking exercise.
Correct.
Oh,
that's right. But does exercise help the movement? Yes. If you are a generally sedentary person, are your guts more sedentary? Yes. So stand up.
It's there again. I've got to start. So it was after my first son was born, medical problems, and I quit being active to the degree I've always known for 2 years. There's a lot of days where I did not do anything active, and it took a while. And all of a sudden I realized the differences in my body, and I started getting allergies again. And that I had as a little kid, and bowel movements changed, whatever. But since that time, and for the past, decades, however many decades, I mean, I just almost daily, and
you will be a weller person for it.
Yeah.
And you have less likelihood to have constipation, less likelihood to have SIBO.
Okay.
Based on that. So those in general, three things. And then once it's already there, if it's already broken. Oh, and I guess another one to put in there would be intermittent fasting. Like I would, now kids are different, but if we're talking to adults out there, I'd say, don't snack. Just, there's a time and a place for dessert. There's a time and a place for this, but I haven't looked in your cupboard lately, Kevin, but I mean,
you'd like it. Remember we did a show recently and we were talking about sources of iron, something like that. You said Brazil nuts.
Yeah. Selenium.
Yeah. I got Brazil nuts in there, but I match them with dates.
If you do that at lunch and dinner, you're fine. But if you're doing that at 2:00, you're shutting your migrating motor complex down. There is no call for
Yeah,
snack.
I'm snacking. Well, right now. I'm intermittent. I mean, I'm not eating in the morning. And I'm kind of at a bad place. I'm eating late at night a little more than I am. I've been staying up later, especially now I'm watching the Olympics and stuff, and I'll snack and stuff. So I get up in the morning, I think, man, I still got food in there. So I don't eat, and then I exercise, and then 1 o'clock I eat lunch.
And then don't eat till dinner.
Yeah, I'm not doing that. I'm snacking.
And it's also interesting, if you're spending 3,000 calories, you're not eating 3,000. There's no way you're eating 3,000.
I know. How do I have any fat on me at all?
Because Kevin Miller, it's not about calories in, calories
okay,
out.
we got to do that show. Okay. Yeah. All right. Well, hopefully I did some justice to
let's say all right one more time.
IBS and SIBO and poop.